Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is awake. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you are likely to hear awake used is to mean to stop sleeping or to cause someone else to stop sleeping. A second way you might hear the verb awake used is to mean to regain consciousness. So you might hear this used after an individual is given anesthesia, right? So they're intentionally sort of made to go to sleep during a medical procedure, right? And after that procedure is over, they will become conscious again. So we could use that verb to describe that particular action. A third way you hear awake used is to mean to become aware of something or to realize something. I've got an example sentence a little later that connects to this particular meaning. A fourth way you might hear awake used is to mean to become active again. So sometimes this is used with different senses. So it could be like our sense of taste, kind of becoming active again. So I know some people who unfortunately had caught COVID lost that sense of smell or the sense of taste. And for some, they have not been able to regain it, but for others, it has become active again. So we could use the verb to, again, describe that action of the returning sense. You should know that awake is an irregular verb. Let me say that again very clearly. It's an irregular verb. So to make the progressive tense, we're going to drop the E and add ing to form awaking. The past tense form of this verb requires a spelling change. So we're going to change the A to an O, and that makes awoke. Awoke. And then our participle form here, we keep the vowel and O, and then we add an N to the end of the word to form awoken. Awoken. Okay? Now, you might be happy to know no additional phrasal verbs that we need to study or discuss today. That's going to allow us to do some verb tense practice. Today, we'll focus on the simple past tense and the simple future using will. Let's start with the simple past tense. We use this verb tense to describe an action that occurred at some known point in the past. Sometimes in sentences, there will be time signals like yesterday, last week, last month, or a specific date in the past. Okay? But not every simple past tense sentence has a time signal. It might be implied as part of a conversation or as part of a story, right? If I was telling you what happened to me yesterday, I wouldn't keep saying yesterday, yesterday, yesterday in each sentence. You would sort of understand, like, she's still talking about that particular day. The nice thing about the simple past tense is that our structure is going to be the same no matter what our subject is. Okay? So in the affirmative, we'll have our subject, and then we are going to have our irregular form of the verb. Okay? You can see that in my example here. A man living near the park awoke to find a thief sneaking into his bedroom to steal valuables. Saw a sentence fairly similar to this in a recent newspaper article, right? So here, right, he came out of his sleep. If I want to make a negative simple past tense sentence, then my structure will be to have my subject, then did not, and then the base verb. Okay? You can see this in the example here. They didn't awake to the fact that their perennial plants needed pruning until their neighbors pointed it out. Okay? Here's a use of awake, meaning to realize something. Okay, so I'm describing maybe a family, a group of people living at a particular house who didn't know that they needed to prune these particular plants. So we have didn't and then our base verb. To make a yes or no question, my structure is to start with did, then we have our subject, and then the base verb. So I hope you notice that the only time I'm using that irregular past tense is in the affirmative. That's the only time I use awoke, not in the negative, not with my yes or no questions. So let's look at the yes or no example. It says, did she awake from the coma? This question would tie back to that second definition. So this just isn't about going to sleep, maybe for a night, right? We're maybe talking about someone who has lost consciousness for a longer period of time. Now, let's practice sentences in the simple future using will. It's really common to hear will used to make predictions, sometimes to make promises as well. You might hear people also use it to describe their plans. Again, with this form of the simple future, my structure is going to be the same no matter what my verb tense is. So in the affirmative, I start with a subject, I use will, and then I use the base verb. Here's an example. And I should note my example here comes from a very famous speech. I've seen this speech in a number of news articles. The country of India recently celebrated its 75th anniversary of its independence. And so the first Prime Minister, Nehru, gave a speech back in 1947 where he said, "At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom." Okay, so this is all about kind of gaining independence, sort of regaining that sense of freedom as well. I think that's a lot of what he was talking about in that particular sentence. Next, let's look at making a negative simple future sentence. Here, our structure is to start with our subject, then use will not, and then the base verb. You might also hear people use the contraction for will not. That's won't. Won't. So you can see that in my example here. The teenager won't awake before noon. Right? Maybe that's my prediction there. Finally, if I want to ask a yes or no question in the simple future, my structure is to start with will. Right? Then I'm going to have my subject, then the base verb. An example here, will this awake our senses? Right? Maybe it's a new product, a new thing that's kind of being marketed and targeted for us. Now, let's spend a moment looking at some words related to our verb awake. And the first word we're going to look at is just the adjective form of this word. So, same spelling, same pronunciation. The adjective awake can refer to someone or something that is not asleep. So, an example here, is the baby awake? Right? Awake or sleeping? Most parents would hope, oh, the baby is sleeping. Awake can also be used as an adjective to describe someone who is conscious, alert, and aware. So, again, we're heading back to school. Many teachers in this first week of class in particular are going to have to say to their students, are you awake? Are you alert? Here, they're also probably asking, kind of implied, are you paying attention? Another related phrase you might hear is wide awake. And this is just a way to note that someone is fully awake. Sometimes, maybe this happens to you. You get up in the morning and you're doing things, but you're not fully alert or fully aware. So, an example of how you might hear this used would be, he was wide awake at 2 a.m. Right? So this isn't someone who was kind of maybe like one eye open, right? They are fully alert. I hope that doesn't happen to you. That occasionally happens to me in the middle of the night where I am just fully awake. It's usually my mind is thinking about things I need to do, things I need to follow up on, etc. So Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.